Welcome to the Curious Hope Podcast, where we wrestle with hard topics and hidden questions. My name is Pastor JD. I'm here once again at Blue Mountain Community Church, and we are continuing our series called City on a Hill, where we look at how Christ followers should engage with all different aspects of culture. And I'm very happy to announce that my guest today is going to be Pastor Nate Bowling, who is coming back after running the gauntlet of our first 3 episodes of the podcast. So thanks for coming back and being willing to be back on, Pastor Nate.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. I enjoy any form of advice / wisdom I can bring to the conversation.
Awesome. So today, and I know we've talked about this just a little bit beforehand, but not much. So here's what we're going to be going through and talking about today. First off, we're going to start talking about money.
Ooh.
Everyone loves talking about money, right?
Who doesn't love money?
So let's look a little bit first at, let's talk a little bit about what money means in our culture. So what when I say our culture, I'm saying just the United States in general, Western U.S. culture. What is the significance of money in our culture today? What would you say, Pastor Nate?
Oh, I think it's the 2 things that come to mind when I think of money in our culture. The number 1 is power. The number 2 is security. So in our line of work, we don't have the luxury of having a plethora of money. And that's okay because, like, for us, money doesn't equal power, right? For us, money is more of equal security. And so that's why I would say, like, the 2 things that I've witnessed in my life is money equaling power and security.
What do you mean by security? So you went a little bit into power. What do you mean by security?
Yeah, so for instance, like being able to pay bills, being able to take care of incidents that happen that are not expected, the security of knowing that you can take care of unexpected things and health and make sure you can get to work and do all the things that you need to do. That's what I would call security.
Yeah, it's almost like there's a lot of things that you can do if you have enough money and a lot of things you can't do. So it's security, but it's also almost an enabler too. Like it enables you to, whether it's follow your dreams or get a slushie, that get a dessert and not just a meal, or get a meal. It enables you to do things that you can do. One thing that I wrote down about money too in our culture that I've noticed is money is definitely a status symbol, whether that's like consciously or unconsciously, and that like we perceive of people that have a lot of money as better people and people that don't have a lot of money as not as good people, whether that's, conscious or unconscious. I definitely think money is a status symbol. And one of the ways that I really see that is whenever people make a lot of money right off the bat, what do they normally go out and do?
Spend it.
They go and they get a nice car, or they get a chain, they get some bling, so to show, to flex, saying like, hey, look, I got a lot of money, because it's a status symbol. Can you share a story from your life where you were either able to flex financially, you used money as a status symbol and you're like, hey, look at me, or a story where you were looked down on because everyone was able to flex financially and you weren't? So as you think of a story, I have one right off the top, so I'll share my story and then you think about yours as I say this. So I lived and if any of you are living in the state or the place that I'm talking about, please don't take it as a personal offense, but I moved my senior year of high school to South Carolina and I had a terrible experience there. I went to a certain school, a private school, and I drove up. I think I had a 2000 Toyota Camry. It was my first car, and I was still driving that. It's a good, reliable, solid car. It's not fancy. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's not great.
Gets the job done.
Yeah, but I remember driving up to school for the very first time, and I've shared this story before with other people. It was like a whole new world. Everyone was driving these, latest edition Dodge Challengers, or this pickup truck that you could tell had been lifted with all of the bling and accessories. Like, I don't even know what it's called, but like the front guard and the lights on top of the pickup truck, whatever. Anyways, I instantly, when I got there with my rundown Toyota Camry, I knew like, wow, I'm at the bottom, the bottom heap. Right here. And because of that kind of culture, it definitely money was seen as extremely. It was a big status symbol in that culture. I had like no status at all. Me
Yeah.
and my Toyota Camry. Yeah, can you share a story where you either were able to flex financially or you weren't?
So two come to mind. One of the the I don't know if this is a great story or not, but it's the only one that came to mind when I was thinking about like flexing. Was so the year was, oh gosh, I want to say like 2001, 2002, whatever year the Xbox 360 came
Oh,
out. So like that holiday season, those suckers were hard to get a hold of, right? And not only were they hard to get a hold of, they were hard like they were no one could really afford them. They were like $300 straight up.
which back then is a lot more money
Oh
than it
yeah,
is
man,
today.
that was
Yeah.
expensive. And so I was able to get one for Christmas. And like I'm not going to lie, like I kind of took a lot of pride in that. And so like pretty much everywhere I was going, like I was in middle school. Everywhere I would go, I took my Xbox 360 with me.
Wait, are you
What?
serious?
Yeah. So like whether that was to like my grandma's house, my cousin's house, wherever, I had it with me just in case I could hook it up and play. Little did I know that you needed like Wi-Fi and stuff because like I really didn't know what I was doing. I came from Nintendo stuff where like you didn't need to be connected to the internet. But yeah, so that was a time that I would say that I flexed. I don't know how relevant that is. But the other time that I would say that I was flexed on would probably be my whole college experience. I went to a private Christian school, as you did as well. And like, I don't know if your school was like mine in the sense of like, private Christian schools tend to have a certain demographic of really rich people that can afford to go there.
Yep, where mom and dad,
Yeah.
paid the way to get there.
And
Yeah.
so like it felt weird because like everyone's driving really nice cars. I'm driving a beat up Jeep Liberty that barely does what it's supposed to do. And then like everyone's like, "Oh yeah, we're going to like Bermuda for like spring break." And I'm like, I'm going back to Ohio." Yeah. Joke's on you. Yeah, it was fell out of place a lot of times. And then I managed to find a niche, a group of people that were in the same kind of financial status as me, and became really good friends with them. Not saying that that had anything to do with it, but it definitely helped me in that area of not feeling as bad about things.
Yeah, and that's because money is seen, as such a facilitator for security, and like we're talking about, money is power, it's status. What can happen then is, we're telling stories where we fell out of place or where we were able to flex on people. And for those of you who don't know what flex means, that means like showing off. That's
Yeah,
that
showing
is
off.
more lingo. I'm thinking like, would my parents know what the word flex means? So flex means showing off. So like, when have you shown off?
Yeah.
Your money. But I think that what it can cause then is, and I know, it's easy to get jealous of people that have money, that have a nice car. I know when people drive by, because I love Ford Mustangs. I used to have an older Ford Mustang. But when I see a nice new one, I get so jealous, if I'm being
yeah.
honest. Like, oh, I would love, to have that. And that's why, we like to show off when we have money, or we get jealous when we don't. It's because in our culture, money, it's a status symbol. It represents power. It represents a lot of different things. But if we think, about what's at the root of it, so why do you think that is? So why do you think it is a status symbol?
I've been struggling with that question myself internally, because like, oh man, how often do you find yourself going out in public, especially
Well,
these
not
days?
now.
But like when you do, you find people wearing some very obscure things and things that you're like, why are you wearing this? Because like it doesn't apply to the environment or the situation. One of the things that I think I've been thinking about the most is like AirPods.
AirPods.
Right?
I was thinking of
Yeah.
the exact same thing.
So like
Yeah.
I'll be out doing something. For instance, like we go grocery shopping. We live not that far from Walmart. We go to Walmart. I have on multiple occasions been in Walmart grocery shopping and seeing another couple grocery shopping, and one of the partners in that couple is wearing AirPods as they're shopping. And I'm like, okay, AirPods inherently aren't bad. They're not necessarily like they're pretty expensive, but why are you wearing them right here, right now, when you're with another person? I'm like, what? I feel like you're trying to say something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're not wearing those because, like, it's ideal.
Yeah.
You're wearing them to say something.
Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head, at least for me, because when I'm thinking about this, because it's hard for us to sort of get outside of our heads. Well, because we think, because we've been raised in America, well, of course money's important, but why is it actually? And I think it has a lot to do with consumerism and the fact that we value things over people. So like in the story you're saying, you're trying to say something and you're ignoring your spouse who's right next to you. We value things and how we're perceived more than we value people. I want to bring in so it's just we live in a very materialistic and a consumption-based society. Some statistics, I want to bring in some statistics. So, and this was shocking to me to read. A 2018 Pew Research study said that 23% of people value money more than anything else in life.
Wow.
Do you know what the percentage of people that value friends more than anything in life?
Oh, gosh, I don't even know.
It's less. It's 19%.
Wow.
So we live in a culture where people value money more than they value
relationships,
friends, which is, it sounds crazy to say it out loud, because we're like, oh, that's not how it should be. But that's just the fact of the matter. In money, there's a few more statistics, and some of these don't apply as much to what we were talking about, but it applies to the fact of like how integrated money is into our lives. The average American, according to a 2017 Experian study, the average American has a credit card balance of $6,375, which is a lot. There are many. The rest of the statistics I have. There are many studies that conclude that arguments over money are the number one stressor in a marriage. They are the number one topic of fights in a marriage, and they're the number two cause of divorce behind infidelity. So cheating on your spouse is the only cause of divorce that's higher than money itself. So it seems like you're saying money, money and showing off money, having that kind of power, it's almost more important than relationships, at least in our culture.
Yeah, money, it's a weird thing, but money determines a lot. I don't like that it does, but like I'm not gonna lie to our listeners. My wife and I have had many conversations, many disagreements, many different views on money, and it's because like she's a saver, I'm a spender. That's who we are. But also, I think that comes down to like more than just money. It's like a philosophy of life. I think also, which is, it's. I think there's some more deep rooted things in the conversation of money that go unnoticed.
Yeah, so I think it'll be good to say how can we get deeper at this. I have a few Bible verses that I'm going to read right now. The first is from Ecclesiastes, which you already know I'm a big Ecclesiastes fan.
Oh, who isn't?
Ecclesiastes 5 verses 10. And so it says, "He who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves wealth with his income. This also is vanity." And even just thinking personally, like that's just how it goes, because you can buy the new Xbox 360.
Yeah.
But then the Xbox One is going to come out.
Yep.
And there's always going to be something new, something, bigger. And it almost goes to the fact that putting money, as the God of our lives, it will never fulfill us completely. I have one or two more. So I want to sort of start challenging our situation also. So we're talking about, yeah, money, it shouldn't be the most important thing, even though it is. Relationships should be more important. But what about for people where money is absolutely essential? So we're both talking as people, who are privileged in the sense that we both have jobs.
Yeah.
And for us, money isn't the most important thing because we can both afford to put food on the table tonight.
Yep.
How do you think this conversation changes for someone who, needs money so badly? Do you think that it's a little different? Do you think we should be careful in how we talk about it because of those situations?
I think I would say so. And money changes. I mean, money for some people equals life. Like, if there's no money, there's no living. And I'm not talking about buying the latest bougie thing or I'm talking about putting food on the table. I'm talking about having basic human needs, having a home. I've taken the kids in the youth to Lapaway, Idaho, and to Heart Butte, Montana before, to Indian reservations. Okay. And we did kids camps at both of them. And in that culture, money equals just being able to do basic things. It's not that they're using money to do ridiculous things. Money equals, hey, I can actually provide for my family and give something back and put food on the table and do all the basic things that we take for granted.
Yeah, it's easy to say, oh, don't think about money, stop caring about money if you have enough money.
Exactly.
And so we want to definitely keep that in mind when we're trying to push off this love of money and this love of things, that we can afford to do that, but we have to be understanding with people, who can't.
Would we call it love though for those people? I don't know if I would call it love.
I think that's a good
I wouldn't
point.
say,
what do you mean? Expand on that?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that what they are, their need for money is not love. I think that it can ultimately, as we've witnessed in our own lives, ultimately lead to a love of money. But in their stage of life right now, I would say it's a need. It's not a love.
So it's not. It's money. They need money. People who are less fortunate need money to get, shelter, food, security. So it's not really the money. It might seem like they're, So I think that's a great point, is that in all circumstances, love of money is bad. But we need to be careful not to judge people who are obsessed with money because we don't know what their circumstances are. Those are some really good points there. I want to sort of shift and start talking about consumerism, because I think these two things are tied so tightly, and how our society views money. I think it's tied to the fact that we consume. So I'm going to start off by, I'll just start off by asking, what are some examples of consumption and how rampant it is just in the world, in our society? And I can bring up examples from my life because I'm, bad at this too. Something as simple as Netflix, for example, right? I know my wife and I, when we, have had a long day, and I want to start off by saying we're not just saying, oh, all consumption is bad, but let's talk about how integrated it is, into our society. So we'll get home after a really long day, and we love to just, cuddle up on the couch and watch a few Netflix TV shows together.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. And so that's one example. Do you have any examples of consumption in your life that you see or that you...
I have too many. That's the problem. We've been trained really well to be consumers in our culture, in our society. And I hate to admit it, but it is who I am. I am a consumer. And I do, for instance, whenever, the new Mac products drop, I'm that guy who's like, man, I really, really could go for this, but I don't really need it. but I want to go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they get me. But yeah, man, technology, even like food. How often? I mean, you're a vegetarian, so you don't have to deal with too much of it. But like every time I get a Taco Bell commercial, if they added something new, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to go try that. Like Taco Bell, like, oh my goodness, like that's how we've been trained.
Yeah.
And I know for a fact that, let's just talk about Walla Walla as a whole. I know Walla Walla as a city is really bad at this too, because anytime anything new pops up, oh my gosh, it is crazy. Good luck doing anything. Like that new food service store, like you can buy in bulk.
Oh, really? I haven't.
It took forever to even get a parking spot at that place. Like anytime anything new pops up, Walla Wallans flock and like just consume the crud out of whatever it is. When Mod Pizza opened up, oh my gosh, it was insane.
Yeah.
It was absolutely insane.
Yeah. And so it's not just us. So the amount that Americans spend on Black Friday is more than half of what Americans give to churches yearly.
Oh.
The average American home has 300,000 items, according to the Los Angeles Times. On average, every American throws away, guess how many pounds of clothing per year?
Gosh.
Pounds of clothing.
I don't even.
Just guess.
I don't even want to know.
68 pounds of clothing.
Holy
The
cow.
average American throws away 68 pounds of clothing every year. And Americans spend $1.2 trillion a year on non-essential items. So this is 100% something that is ingrained into us. So I'm going to read a Bible passage, and then I'm going to ask the question, is consuming bad? So we're saying all the bad things, and we'll qualify that in a second. But this is Luke chapter 12, verses 13 through 21. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." And this is Jesus talking. But Jesus said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully. And he thought to himself, 'What shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops.' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be?' So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God." You know what I'm thinking while I read this passage is about how right after COVID hit, many of us, and I did this, run to the store and grab as many rolls of toilet paper we could possibly imagine, grab everything that we possibly can. This passage is really condemning towards someone like me who loves to shop at Costco and likes to buy $20 tubs of Nutella.
Yeah.
If you're listening, don't judge me for it. It was awesome. It was this industrial-sized tub of Nutella.
That is amazing.
Yeah, it was great. But for those of us who, it's hard not to want to do that, to build a bigger barn, store up more crops. But our lives could be required of us at any day. So, Pastor Nate, is consuming things inherently bad?
Man, as much as I want to say yes, I'm actually going to say no.
Okay.
And I'm going to say this: moderation. I think it's okay to consume. I think it's okay for that to happen. I think moderation is key. I don't think there's anything wrong with Netflix. I don't think Netflix inherently is evil. I think that the overindulgence and like the parts of your life that you can't get back when you've consumed too much, that's the issue. I don't think sitting down and watching some shows when you have nothing else necessarily to do and work on is a bad thing. I don't think that having like I don't know, like I'm an Apple guy, so having an iPhone is bad. I think when you let it control your life, I think that's a real issue. Yeah, so moderation is what I would say.
But here's the hard part. And I'm gonna keep pushing
Oh,
on this.
keep
I'm gonna
pushing.
keep throwing you fastballs. For us as an American, moderation means, yeah, I only need 5 pairs of shoes. That's fine. For many people who live in different parts of the world, or people who are in America that are less fortunate than we are, because I think it's safe to assume both you and I are quite privileged compared to most of America.
Oh, I would agree.
For us, moderation might look very different to us than someone else. So while we may not be condemning ourselves, being like, oh yeah, I'm being moderate. I only have two or three houses. I only have 5 cars and 3 pairs of shoes. I'm being moderate because I need all of these things. How do you draw the line of moderation when, as we've been talking about, this consumption and money-centric attitude is so ingrained into who we are?
My hope and my prayer is that the Holy Spirit can convict. That's how I would say so. Is like, just because someone has 10 pairs of shoes and they consider that moderate for them, I would hope that at some point the Holy Spirit would tug and be like, hey, like this is too much. I'm a big fan of collecting. I got a few hobbies. One of them is comic books and stuff like that. And if I collected every single one that I wanted to, I would have to build a new barn. You know what I mean? But for me, I limit myself because, it's a deep trail you can go down. And so I limit myself. And by limiting myself, that might be on occasion, I'll be like, okay, one a month, one comic book a month, or one every now and then. I limit myself because there is a bit of conviction that I experience of yeah, what am I gonna do with all these? If I was to die tomorrow, Bethany's left with all these comic books that she's got to do something with, So there is some conviction involved in my consumption. And I typically make a rule for myself when I buy clothing. So right now, I would say I have enough clothing to cover me for 2 weeks, right? I think that's a pretty okay amount of clothing. I have enough for 2 weeks. If I was to buy a new shirt, then I make myself get rid of a shirt to replace that shirt. Yeah, I don't know if that's
one
helpful.
thing. Yeah. No, well, what it seems to me is that you said sort of that you limit what you can want something.
Absolutely.
And you don't
I have a list.
Yeah, you have stuff that you want, but that doesn't mean that you get it. And that might sound simple, but it's something that we're not taught. You know what?
Sure.
Every single advertisement we see on Facebook, on TV is, if you want it, then get it, because you can have a credit card and buy things you can't afford. So
and then go into debt and then ruin your life.
So being responsible normally doesn't factor into what we get. What this Bible passage is talking about, having more than we can use. Society doesn't tell us to take that into consideration. It just says, if you want it, you get it.
Yeah.
But what it looks like this passage is talking about is that just because you want something doesn't mean that you should get it. And just because you have something doesn't mean that it's best,
to
being
keep
used,
it to yourself.
Right? Yeah.
Also.
So I'm going to dial up the speed even more and ask you one of the hardest questions that I've ever encountered. I remember being asked this question in college in a philosophy class, and it really convicted me, and it's really hard. So if we truly value people over money, we truly love our brothers and sisters that are here on this earth more than we value money, and we can even just keep it in the United States, why don't we give, because what loving someone else means is valuing them more than yourself, why don't we give our money away to charities, to people who are less fortunate? Why don't we give our money away until the point where it will hurt us more than it helps them. So what I mean by that is, say if I were to have $100 right now, I could, you were to just hand me $100 out of your wallet. I could go and I could give that to, an organization. An organization we had here at the church, Children of Promise.
Yeah.
Right? I could take that and sponsor, a kid for 3 months with that money. And I guarantee you that would help that child a lot more than me using that $100 and going out and buying a leaf blower. That's one thing that I bought recently that my wife is like, do we need a leaf blower? And I think she might be right, because I could, use the rake instead of the leaf blower. But that's my question is, why don't we give until the point where, should we give until the point where it hurts us more than it would help someone else?
So look, let me see if I'm following right. So like people are willing to go into debt for like a PS5, right? Right now, like that's a hot commodity, and people are willing to like go into far debt to get themselves one. And so why are people willing to do that versus do that kind of same mentality, but by helping other people out?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm saying if you are a Christ follower, if we are a Christ follower, we're called to love everyone else more than ourselves. With my paycheck, why don't I give almost all of it away to the point where I can still survive, and it won't hurt me giving everything away, but still give almost all of it away to people that it will help more than me spending it on a leaf blower?
I have an answer.
Okay, this is a really hard question. I told you, I'm not going easy on you, Pastor.
I have an answer, but I want the listeners to know, like, don't take offense to this. But if we deep down search our hearts, we know that this is true, that inherently we are selfish. It's a lot easier. And that's the other thing too, is it's a lot easier to spend money for ourselves than it is for someone else. It's a lot easier to justify something when it's for us versus someone else. And yeah, our society has trained us to like, it's about us. It's about you. It's about like I had a friend, he was telling me it's about like, people, like businesses are like, oh my gosh, I'm botching it.
That's fine.
But it's like the marketing to us is about us, the consumer. Like it's not about us sharing. It's about the companies making their almighty dollar, and they've gotten really good at it, like extremely good at it. And yeah, so I think it's a combination of all those things.
But you're not answering my question. What should we do as Christ followers?
Oh, what should we do?
Yeah.
Well, that's an easy question or easy answer. Like, we need to stop consuming for ourselves, right?
So you would say, to answer this question, you would say we should do that. We should give all of our money away to the point where it would hurt us.
I think we should do better. I think stewardship is important. Mm-hmm. Like God gifts us with what we have, and it's up to us to use it to build and further his kingdom, right? And so yeah, I think we can do a better job. I don't think that in any world, either it being us going all out helping people or all out consuming for ourselves, I don't think going to any place where it should hurt us financially is a wise thing.
Why not? Because see, because
sure.
you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If I could give $20 and still be able to pay my rent and put food on my table, but my $20 would help someone else out more than I could use a leaf blower.
Yeah.
The $20 I give away is going to help someone else
sure.
out more than me buying a leaf blower.
I'm going to use the example of like when you're flying and the plane is losing oxygen in the cabin. Mm-hmm. They tell you to put your mask on first, and then to help the people in your aisle or people next to you. I think in order for us to be the best we can, we need to help ourselves first. Mm-hmm. And then worry about our neighbors.
I think that's a really good analogy. So you would say help ourselves first, but we still need to be mindful of trimming the extra barns from our life. Trimming
But if we're not in a good place and we're not making good financial decisions, then we can't help anyone else.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's part of what stewardship means, is figuring out how to put that oxygen mask on yourself through education, saving, working hard. But then focus on putting masks on others, not just pumping millions of molecules of oxygen through our mask while other people.
Exactly. And I know that I personally can do a better job.
Yeah. That's what I was getting to. It is the way that I answered this question after wrestling with it for weeks in college was, we should give more money away, and we suck. We as Christ followers, we're selfish. You said, we're selfish. And a lot of times we just don't want to do what we should do. And it's going to be a lifelong, struggle, like the rich young ruler. And I think that's encouragement, though, like the rich young ruler who Jesus said, give all of your possessions away, and he went away sad. That's pretty much all of us Christ followers who are here, in the United States. We're like the rich young ruler. We can still take hope, though, because the disciples are like, well, then who can get to heaven? Because nobody's going to go and just give all of their money away. That's hard to do. But Jesus said, you're right. You shouldn't get to heaven. With man, that's impossible. But thankfully, it's still possible with God. But we can try harder.
We can this is just my general rule of thought, is we can always do better. I know I'm not perfect. I know that I'm flawed. I know that I'm broken. But I'm also not naive to think that every human being on this earth is doing the absolute best they can do in these efforts. Mm-hmm. I can say Mother Teresa did a great job. That is one of the few examples that we can think of the most selfless, sacrificing person. But that's about it. So if we're all not Mother Teresa, I think we all can do a better job.
Yeah. And even it's funny, even she had actually some messed up stuff.
No, absolutely, I read about. She did, yeah.
So we all can do it. Even Mother Teresa
could have done better.
Yeah, and if we're not going to talk about this, but you can just Google that if you want to. But we can all do better. That's so wise that you say that. I think that's a great philosophy and a great way to approach life. Is that we can all do better when it comes to consuming and money.
So we can all do better in all
a lot of things.
So, let's be honest. Perfection is not something we can accomplish in this life.
Yep, we suck. That's why we love Jesus.
Yep, love Jesus.
Let's talk about this in the church.
Ooh.
You came to me 2 weeks ago and you said, something I've heard a lot and I'd love to talk about is the phrase, I'm not being fed. I've heard this phrase too before, where someone will, when choosing a church, saying, but I'm just not being fed there, so I'm going to leave and go somewhere else. What do you think of this phrase and how it relates to our consumption-based, selfish attitude?
It gives me the heebie-jeebies, man. I hate that phrase because it's taking away that there's any responsibility on the actual person, and that it's the industry or the company, the church, that isn't fulfilling that need. So I'm gonna shop a different place because it's not fulfilling that need. Forget that, man.
It's I don't like Taco Bell's menu anymore because they got rid of the spicy potato soft tacos. I'm going to Del Taco.
Yeah, even though they don't have spicy potato, nowhere has them, but you know what? They don't have them anymore. I'm going to Del Taco. Yeah. I cannot stand when, there's been several times in my life where people have told me that about them kind of hopping ships to a different church or something, saying I just wasn't being fed. And it's taken a lot for me to bite my tongue in those situations because they're literally saying I'm just a mindless person that just, as long as I'm being taken care of by what the person's saying and saying what I want to hear, then it's okay with me.
Yeah. So oftentimes when people say this phrase, I'm not being fed, it's for very selfish reasons. But isn't it important though to still be fed by the place that you're going to, the church that you're going to?
Here's my thing. I don't think it's necessarily the church's job to feed.
What's the church's job?
I think the church's job is to provide opportunities to be fed. If you aren't getting fed, then maybe you need to do some like self introspection and check out why you're not being fed. And then realize, hey, you know what? I know a way that I can be fed, and take it upon yourself to feed yourself. Because the situation is, and JD, I'm guessing if you haven't learned this, you are going to learn this, working in a church. There's a lot of Sundays that it's work for us, right? It's not like we just get to be in like a normal church congregant and show up and just be. We have to take it on our own responsibility to feed ourselves 9 times out of 10 on a Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. I love Pastor Jim. And like this has always been the case since I've been in like ministry. But it's not every Sunday that I get something out of the message, right? I've heard a lot of messages in my life. I've been going to church my whole life. It's not always the message from the pastor that actually does something for me. Knowing that, I've taken it upon myself to learn how I get fed and what things fill my spiritual cup and what things push me and make me grow. And I take them upon myself and do those.
Like maybe listening to a podcast.
No, podcasts are huge in my growth and development. Mm-hmm. They are. And this one especially. I love Curious Hope. But you got to figure out what really is the thing that like fills the soul for you. And guys, listeners, the church won't always be that for you. The church fulfills a lot of needs. Sometimes it's not always the ones that are feeding you and the ones that are filling your spiritual cup.
Because the church isn't all about you
Amen.
Individually.
Amen.
One thing I'm thinking about this too is I've always thought, yeah, it's important that the church provides opportunities for you to be fed.
Agreed.
But that's not the primary importance. I would think a good response to someone saying, I'm not being fed is saying, well, are you feeding like others? If you're not being fed by the church isn't just there to entertain you. Are you volunteering at the church?
Yeah.
Are you pouring, your heart into the community that's there? Are you inviting visitors over for lunch? Probably not now because of COVID. But are you, like you said, I just love what you said. Are you putting your work in to be fed and also to feed others? Because that's the gospel doesn't call us to just be discipled. The gospel calls us to go and make disciples of all nations, to go and feed others, not just be fed, not consume. It's not about us, it's about other people. So I love how you put that it's not the church is not all it's not the church's job to always just be there to feed you. No. And that's a lot of people think that because we're taught that by society, but that's not how the church works.
I think I can't say that there's a perfect analogy of the church. But one of my favorites is that of a lighthouse. Like the church is just supposed to be this safe place. This place for people to know that they're loved and accepted. And it's not supposed to be a place to be a consumer and, oh, they didn't say something that I liked, or, oh, they're just, it's not feeding me, and like abandon ship. Like, especially before COVID, after COVID, it's important for you to stay anchored into your community and to be putting forth effort in that community and to be helping the community grow, because that's ultimately like what the church is supposed to be and be about.
Are there any resources or anything? Would you just say it's a matter of having those conversations and trying to rewire our brains? Because I'm thinking, what if someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, you're right, I have been thinking of the church as just a place for me to consume. What would your advice be, Pastor Nate, to sort of help us along this path? You sort of answered the question I'm asking already by saying seek out what fills you. Are there any other practical steps that you would advise us to take on how can we sort of relearn what the church's role is?
Well, always books are good. Trying to think of a book off the top of my head that helps with this. I don't have one, but
That's fine.
if I remember one, I'll definitely make sure that we get that out there. But I mean, ultimately, you as a person have to find out where it is you meet God the most. One of my number one places where I meet God the most is praying and walking. Like a prayer walk, man. Especially like it's even taken to like a whole new level when I'm outside. That is the place where I meet God the best. Is that where you meet God the best? Not necessarily. You have to do some exploration. And like I had a friend in college who like he was the spokesman for Lectio Divina, like which is like meditation worship through scripture. Like he loved it, and that's where he met God the most and the best for him. I'm a fan of Lectio Divina, but that's not my niche. And so you got to find and you got to do some exploration into like prayer, scripture, sermons, talks, conversations. One of the best places I also grow is in conversation. Like this, a podcast of us having a conversation is where I grow. And that's where like listening to other podcasts and people doing similar things and talking theology and scripture pushes me and helps me grow. But I just encourage everyone to figure out where that place is that they meet God.
See, that's the best takeaway possible. We are not filled up by church, by sermons, by music, whatever. We're filled up by God.
Yes.
And there's a lot of avenues to that. For one person, being filled up by a church service, that's great.
That's wonderful.
But that's not everyone.
But that is also a thing that it's not supposed to stay there, you know?
Yeah.
It's great that the church can do that, but it's not meant to stay there. It's meant to grow and to deepen and to widen.
Yeah.
That's the thing is like church is great and I will always go to church, but it's not meant to just stay there.
When you're being filled up by God, you stop blaming the church for not being filled up.
Yeah.
Because you realize it never was the church filling me up. It's God, and He can
absolutely
access us through the church. But
I also want to say this. I want to say that even though the responsibility is on us, that does not give an excuse to not be a part of a community. Church is super important. If the church wasn't important, Jesus wouldn't have talked about it. Paul wouldn't have help establish it. Like literally the church wouldn't be a thing if we didn't need the church and community. It's still important. So it's important to realize the responsibility is on us, but it's also important to memorize that church and community are still vital.
It's just that the community isn't what fills us up. We are a community of people filled up by God. And being in community can be how God fills us up.
Exactly.
But rewiring that consumeristic mindset where it's all about me. No, church is a place where we are with a bunch of people who are trying not to be selfish, trying to say it's not about me, it's about loving other people. And yeah, that's
church is about
it's
us.
still so important to be with that group of like-minded people who aren't being selfish or trying to be others.
It's about us bringing what we have to the table. So like if you're filled and I'm filled and we're coming to the table together, like that's what it's about. And it's about us, like the ancient Jewish tradition of reading scripture. They would read scripture aloud and around a table with multiple people to literally discuss what they're reading. And like I think that's the same concept for the church, is like we are coming all together and being filled up together or separately, however we're getting filled, and contributing to growing in life in God.
That's awesome, Pastor Nate. I have to wrap us up because we're about at our time. There's a lot of notes that we weren't able even to get through.
My bad, man.
I'm sure we'll have. No, don't say you're bad. I'm saying this is a great conversation, and I'm sure that we can find a way to get you in here again too on a similar topic. But I want to say first, thank you, Pastor Nate, for being willing to come, share your wisdom, share your advice. I want to say thank you to you, all of you listeners out there. Please, if you enjoy this episode, please be sure to share it. Make sure that you're following our podcast. And last but not least, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot us a message on Facebook, on Instagram, or you can email us at thecurioushopepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you. One last time, Pastor Nate.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.